Hoo boy, 2017 was a bit of a shit show, wasn't it? A big old quivering pile of problematic nonsense. And I for one am more than happy that we've all collectively taken it upon ourselves to wrap it up in tinfoil and throw it into a great big bin. But I suppose it wasn't all that bad, was it? Despite feeling like the fever dream that lasted a miserable 12 months, 2017 saw the release of some absolute stonking great games, and now I'm here to tell you all about the ones that I liked more than the other ones, because that's just what people do, isn't it? I'm unsure why I've even done a wordy intro to this, to be honest. Everyone saw this coming, didn't they? It's not like this is a surprise for anyone. I mean, Zelda's on the list. You know, just in case you were panicking. No need to panic, it's there. Anyway, there's no hierarchical order to my choices, and there's no defined categories either. These are just 8 games that released in 2017 that I reckon were real good. Now let's get started. Night in the Woods. In a year filled with a large cupboard's worth of incredible games, it almost feels a bit weird how much Night in the Woods still managed to stand out from the crowd, but it's a testament to just how special it truly is. Night in the Woods tells the story of May, a 20-year-old anthropomorphic cat who has recently dropped out of college and returned home to her run-down hometown of Possum Springs. Lonely, anxious and listless, May spends the course of the game struggling to reconnect with old friends from high school, arguing with her parents and making fresh connections to the various residents throughout the town. Impeccably presented with a striking art style and stunning animations, Night in the Woods is a beautiful game to simply observe, but its true soul lies in its incredible writing. Never before, and I mean this too, this isn't hyperbole, has video game dialogue resonated with me on such a personal level, covering a wide range of topics from distant friendships to perceived personal failures to mental health issues, body issues, religion, sexuality, and just the simple act of existing as a 20-something-year-old. Night in the Woods is a game that tapped directly into my heart and had me hooked from the very beginning. Despite a lack of actual voice acting, the game has more to say than most of the games in this genre I've played in the past. It's very clever, it's genuinely funny, it's sad, it's painful, and most of all, it's true to itself. Its core characters are richly detailed, fleshed out in ways you'd probably never expect for a cartoon fox and a chain-smoking crocodile, and even the game's secondary and even tertiary characters all have something to say that adds depth and layers to an already densely detailed world. Despite a weak last act and a twist that will undoubtedly leave a bitter taste in most players' mouths, Night in the Woods is an extraordinary game that stuck with me for the entirety of 2017. Resident Evil 7. Resident Evil has had a bit of a rough run over the last decade. Despite Resident Evil 4 being the greatest game ever created, don't at me, sequels 5 and 6 were lackluster adventures of decreasing returns. As a series, Resi had begun to feel stale and uninspired, with 6 especially taking influence from popular titles like Call of Duty in a desperate attempt to remain relevant instead of focusing on its horror roots in order to stay true to what made it so iconic in the first place. It seemed, in a lot of ways, like Resident Evil had lost its way completely, and even the wonderful Revelations spin-offs did nothing to calm fan fears that main entries in the series were a lost cause altogether. But then, Capcom released Resident Evil 7. Fresh, fierce, and fucking terrifying, Resident Evil 7 turned the series on its head. By controlling protagonist Ethan Winters from a first-person viewpoint, a large change from the series' traditional use of third-person perspective, 7 brings back the tension and claustrophobia that has always defined it as the pinnacle of survival horror. Trapped in a dilapidated farmhouse and pursued endlessly by the powerful and twisted Beta family, 7 is a return to form for the series and is easily the best horror game of 2017. At least, that I played. You know, don't leave a comment if you play better ones, but it's my... Alright, let's just move on. Seti Brutale. I've already said a lot about the Seti Brutale in a video I made just before Christmas, which you can watch by clicking the thing on the screen right now, but it would still feel like a small crime to not talk about it here too. The Seti Brutale is an inventive and stylish puzzle game where the player must use stealth to prevent the murders of the guests of a masked ball who are being brutally slaughtered by the staff of the Seti Brutale, a casino mansion owned by the enigmatic Marquis. The twist? Main character Lafcadio Boone is stuck in a time loop and is forced to repeat the same day repeatedly until all of the mansion's inhabitants are saved from their seemingly inevitable fate. Seti Brutale is an absolute joy to experience and is a true testament to the inventive design capabilities of the indie scene today. A wonderful ride from start to finish and a game you absolutely must play. Splatoon 2. If you told me a decade ago that Nintendo would be the company behind one of the most inventive online shooters ever released, I'd have twisted my body into a grim contortion and howled shrilly into the endless void of the night. But yet, in 2014, Nintendo released SPLATOON, a video game so colourful and fun that it was basically the digital equivalent of taking MDMA while staring at a Jason Pollock painting. I'm too proud of that joke not to include it, even though it's absolutely shite. Anyway, it was, in a lot of ways, the most Nintendo game the company had ever released, covering the most ground with your team's int, shifting focus away from simply killing other players, breathed new life into the genre in ways most would never have expected, making it easily one of the most accessible online experiences available at the time. It's just a shame it was released on the Wii U, really, so no one played it. For this reason alone, releasing SPLATOON on the Switch seemed like an obvious move for Nintendo to make. In fact, I was personally expecting the game to be a straight port of the original, with only some small additions and modifications similar to those given to Mario Kart 8 Deluxe. And in a lot of ways, SPLATOON 2 is a little too comfortably similar to the original, but then that's fine. What was already there is a perfect fit for the Switch, and the new stuff that is in there, like the wonderful Horde mode Salmon Run, which has become a lunchtime favourite for my work colleagues and myself, makes for a complete package that's hard not to recommend. Oh, and let's not forget that the game has been consistently updated with new maps, weapons, clothes and game modes since launch for free. If you own a Switch and you don't own SPLATOON 2, have a good hard long look at yourself in the mirror, because it's undoubtedly one of the best games on the platform and one of my personal favourites of the year. I went on a bit longer there than I thought I was done here. I didn't really consider how much I love that game until right now, to be honest. NIER Automata. Hey you, do you like spectacle fighters like Bayonetta? Do you also like robots and depression? What about questionable costumes for female characters? Well, step right up buddy, because I have a game for you. NIER Automata is a spectacle fighter crossed with a third-person shooter crossed with a bullet hell shoot-em-up with RPG elements thrown in for good measure. You play, for the majority of the game, as 2B, an android soldier who is dressed like a maid for reasons I'm not entirely clear on, who was sent to an abandoned Earth in order to kill an army of sentient machines to make the planet habitable again for the last remaining colony of humans who are currently living on the moon. The game is, as you may have guessed, absolute nonsense, but it's also not. Somehow, despite its core premise, characters and overall presentation, NIER Automata is a heartfelt experience that pushes the boundaries of the medium in interesting and thoughtful ways. The game has 26 endings, 4 of which are locked behind distinct playthroughs, each one offering a slight twist on its core mechanics. As a game, it's a prime example of developer Platinum Games firing on all cylinders. Combat is exciting, boasting tight controls and a diverse range of weapons that offer unique playstyles. The world is a sparsely detailed open collection of distinct environments, and the soundtrack is, well, quite simply unlike anything else I've ever heard in a video game before. A beautiful, effervescent score that adds depth and flavour to each location. But the writing is something else entirely. Fully aware that it's a game, director Yoko Taro has created something that is hard to explain but easy to recommend. It's forever forcing you to question both yourself and the game, constantly putting its foot on the gas pedal before snapping it right back off again, forever keeping you on your toes about what could possibly happen next. Simply put, NIER Automata is an incredible game that is better than it has any right to be, and absolutely deserves its place on this list. The Legend of Zelda: Breath of the Wild. I mean, what else is there to say about Breath of the Wild that hasn't already been said before? Masterpiece is a term thrown around very loosely within this industry, and yet when thinking about Zelda, it's the only word that comes to mind. It may not be the same Zelda I've known and loved since childhood, but as an evolution, as a natural next step in the progression of a series that it's taken few risks since its inception, Breath of the Wild is a bastion of intelligent game design, emergent storytelling, and a prime example of just what makes this medium so unique in the first place. The amount of agency afforded to the player, the ability for them to be expressive in their playstyles, is hands down the best thing Breath of the Wild offers. Never before has a game felt so open, freely allowing you to play the way you actually want to play. Hyrule is a playground, and from the very start the game hands you a set of tools that allow you to port at its various systems and mechanics in a bunch of weird and wonderful ways. As a Zelda game, it may be missing some of the stable elements that made its predecessors so memorable, but just as a game, judged purely on its own merits, there's nothing else out there like it. Breath of the Wild is deserving of its praise, and is one of the greatest games ever made. Also, you can play it on the toilet. Like, can we talk about that for a second, please? You can play this whilst having a poo. I mean, come on. 10 out of 10. Assassin's Creed Origins. Right, okay, don't turn the video off. Listen, I know this is came a little out of left field, but hear me out for a second, alright? I'm not a huge fan of Assassin's Creed. I hated the first one. I adored the second one, kind of fell out with the series after that, but got back on board with Black Flag, and then sort of fully threw myself off the wagon afterwards, allowing myself to be trampled to death by 1,000 stampeding horses. What does that even mean? That's the worst metaphor I've ever written. So when Origins was announced, I didn't really pay much interest. It just looked the same, again, a vast world filled with a seemingly limitless amount of errands to tick off a bid list. I was tired of this formula 4 years ago, and Ubisoft did very little in the run-up of release to convince me that this was anything different. But yet, something drew me in. Post-release reviews were generally favourable, and something itched in my brain. There was something about this that seemed different, so I bought it, and holy shit, it's good stuff. Assassin's Creed Origins is not that different from previous entries in the series. It's still awkward to control, its map screen is just littered with bits and pieces to do, and it's just that little bit too rough around the edges. But what is different made such a huge improvement to the formula that I found myself easily addicted right from the start. Well, not from the very start. The very start is pretty slow. But anyway, an improved combat system that takes a heavy influence from Dark Souls, a loot system ripped straight from Destiny and other contemporary RPGs, a story that features multiple likable characters in a vast world that feels genuinely alive, makes for an Assassin's Creed experience that finally feels as enjoyable as Ubisoft have always been trying to convince us it is for a decade now. And I can't believe I've added this to the list, but here we are. Good work, Ubisoft, although the future stuff is still absolute horseshit. Super Mario Odyssey. If the only Nintendo game released this year had been Breath of the Wild, that would have been fine. After all, Zelda is a once-in-a-generation type of game, the kind that will forever be mentioned whenever great games are discussed. It truly is the type of game a company can only dream of creating. But Nintendo weren't satisfied with just creating one 10 out of 10 experience this year. So Nintendo created two. Super Mario Odyssey is the best game ever made. And I hate how ridiculous that sounds, but it's true. It's just true. Super Mario Odyssey is accessible, it's fun, its capture mechanic is inventive, its movement set is expressive, its kingdoms are tightly designed and beautifully presented, it's packed to the brim with varied things to do. It's Nintendo, distilled into its purest form and poured lovingly into a cartridge. I had more fun with Odyssey this year than with any other game I played. Nothing else even came close, and how could they? Odyssey raises the bar for video games in general by demonstrating a level of design consideration that is leagues better than most games released in the last decade, never mind just in 2017. Super Mario Odyssey is my ultimate game of the year, and with good reason too. Odyssey is a triumph in every single way, and I already can't wait to finish it 100% all over again. It really is that good. Alright, that's it, but there's a few special mentions I'd like to make before we wrap up. Supergiant's Pyre offered a unique twist on basketball by combining it with a fantasy RPG. Uncharted The Lost Legacy breathed life into an aging series by pairing two of the franchise's best characters together and giving players new mechanics to play around with. Mario and Rabbids Kingdom Battle proved that Ubisoft had made the Nintendo quality Mario game in a genre the big N would never have considered using in the first place. Sonic Mania is the best Sonic game since Sonic 3, and once again, wasn't even made by the series' original creators, but well, in this instance it's probably for the best that it is never made by them ever again. Yakuza 0 offered the best entry point for Western fans for the series to start from, and PlayerUnknown's Battlegrounds decimated the competition, becoming the biggest game in the world before it had even left early access. It would have easily had a proper spot on this list if it wasn't for the simple fact that I'm awful at it and didn't play as much as I would have liked to this year. Oh well. And there we have it, my list of the best games of 2017. But now, I want to hear what the best things you played this year were. Leave a comment below and let us know what games you couldn't get enough of in 2017. If you enjoyed this video, please give it a like, share it with your friends, and if you haven't done so already, don't forget to subscribe. Thanks for supporting the channel, and I hope you all have a great 2018. Oh god, it feels so weird to ask people to do things. You don't have to, guys. You don't have to do it.